Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Tuesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. This show, as always, presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. We got the hat on, as always, and some great merch up on the site and some new stuff coming very, very soon. So check that out. Also, we are fueled by Swift Energy. SwiftEnergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off. If you are watching this live on twitch.tv/primetimepk, just putting all the graphics up, you're getting the Tuesday and the Wednesday show right now. That is what we're going to do today. So it may seem a little out of order, but it is just to make my life a little bit easier. So on this show, we're going to be looking at the Flames. We're going to be looking at the NFL. We're going to be looking at the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And we are going to be looking at the WWE. So we got a lot of hockey. We got a bit of hockey, a lot of football, a lot of UFC, and a lot of wrestling coming up on the channel this week. As always, follow me on social media. Big Macco, go Flames. Boy, they went yesterday in a victory over the Chicago Blackhawks. And that is where the conversation will start today. Let's get into it. So, the Calgary Flames with a convincing victory over the Chicago Blackhawks last night. It was on Amazon Prime. We all loved it. We all enjoyed things and everything like that. Calgary has now won 3 in a row and are back into a playoff spot as we record this at 10:59 a.m. Mountain Time here on a Tuesday. Obviously, the big takeaway from this game is Rory Kerins. Just an unbelievable NHL debut. And really, how do you not get excited about a story like that? You know, we talk about romanticizing things all of the time. Pro wrestling is a love story, all of that. Well, this is the romantic side of the world of hockey, as Rory Kerins is a kid, very late round draft pick, has grinded his way, worked up into professional hockey, and now injuries are happening. And it just doesn't feel like it's going to really click for him. And now all of a sudden, he has figured out either luck or whatever is on his side, and the injury bug has gone away, and he is having a career year. And then an opportunity opens up, unfortunate as it may be for Connor Zary, an opportunity opens up, and Rory Kerins dives in, and he has an unbelievable moment. This is such a fantastic story, and the type of thing that makes sports, and this sport, just as great as it could possibly be. There's a lot of bad in this sport, obviously, but there's a lot of great in it as well. And so to see him step up in that way, it just gives you a lot of confidence, and it makes you feel really, really great. And I think there's a few layers to this one. On the one hand, Big Mako, I think I've said your name differently both times, and I know you've been on here before, and I know how to say it, and so I'm apologizing for messing that up. But the kids look good, and it was nice to see the Flames not play down to a worse team. That's certainly something they have done in the past, and something they've done this season. And, I mean, with Chicago, even like pre-Bedard times, they would kind of play down to that team at certain moments. But this team has a bit of a different mentality right now. And that has been the overall thing that we have talked about with the Calgary Flames throughout this season. And we'll talk in a little bit about if the playoffs are actually a realistic thing, or where is this thing going to ultimately lead. But the one thing that I have been focusing on this year with this team more than anything is process over results. And that right there, that comment, for those watching live on Twitch, that comment is something that gives you a lot of confidence about where this thing is going. This is not an overly talented hockey club by any stretch of the imagination. More talented than we thought, but not an overly talented hockey club. And so they are going to, if they are going to be successful, they are going to have to play a way where it is basically all out, all the cliche, 110%, all of that for 82 games. And last night was a good example of that working. There's every opportunity, bit of a weird little stretch with stuff going on in California and everything like that. And now, actually, a couple very important games with the Blues coming up. So very easy to just look past a Monday night out in Chicago. And they didn't. And they had their focus on this night and this night alone. And they came out and they got the job done. That is great to see. Also, Big Macco, thank you so much for the subscription there. I greatly appreciate it here on Twitch. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate the support. for the Flames, again, it's the process. And a big part of this process, and it's something we've talked about a little bit, and we are seeing it here. And look, this could end up being the best game of Rory Kerins' career, and he Walker Tours this thing, and in 20 games we're talking about, hey, remember when that happened? There's a possibility that that happens. I don't think we're going to see that. I don't know if this kid's going to be at a 164 assist pace for the rest of his career, but I understand that maybe this is just a one-game thing. But we have now seen a number of examples of players coming from the American Hockey League up to the National Hockey League and fitting in perfectly, to the point where this can't be a mistake now, right? And it is something that they've talked about for a really long time, and it was tough to do with Daryl Sutter, but they have now this organizational kind of, they're in sync. I'm sure there's a businessy way to say it, but they are in sync right now with everything there. And we have seen the last couple of years, Zary comes up better than expected. Pospisil comes up better than expected. We've seen Matt Coronado eventually gets called up, and it's best case scenario. Pelche is on an incredible run right now. Kirkland earlier this year called up, incredible. Hit or miss. Doesn't really add to my point. Doesn't take away from it either. The point being is that this team now has done such a great job of, this is what we do in the this is what we do in the NHL. We're going to do it in the AHL. And Ryan Huska has a very good understanding of how we are going to make these kids successful. It was right there. It was sitting right there for them. He and Pelche, unbelievable this season in the American Hockey League. So put them together. Makes sense, right? It's so obvious. But I feel like regimes in the past, not to, again, a bit of a drive-by at Daryl Sutter, but regimes in the past is, oh yeah, well, that worked out, but this is the NHL, so you're on the fourth line. It made so much sense. It put him in the exact right spot to succeed, and succeed it did. And now if you're the Flames, again, assuming that this isn't just a one-night thing, you now have three pairs that you feel pretty comfortable with right now, with Huberdeau and Kadri, Backlund and Coleman, the OGs, and Pelche and Kerins. And now, like, Backlund and Coleman with Coronado, chef's kiss, perfect, no notes. Sharon Govich gets a big one last night with Kerins and Pelche. Phenomenal. Love that. Pospisil with Huberdeau and Kadri, it could be going better for him, but that line is going pretty well. And so right now you feel pretty comfortable about where you are at from a Flames standpoint in seeing where this thing is kind of going. And again, when you are looking at the kind of long-term build of this, right now, Pelche and Kerins is your third line. I would suggest that's probably where it stays, right? Like, that's probably, there is an upper bound limit to this thing. We're not talking about the next McDavid, Draisaitl, Crosby, Malkin here. But we are talking about, again, one of the things that this team has done pretty well is the foundation. If they do get to go out and add a franchise, elite, whatever you want, center, this isn't going to be like the cautionary tale that they played last night, where they got Connor Bedard and didn't have anything ready for them. They are now, ironically, set up in a way to get that player, but it is set up too well, and they're not getting that guy. So it's a great situation, I think, for the Flames to be in, because if ping pong balls go their way, or anything like that, then they are, I think, in a phenomenal spot. I think they're in a better situation than Chicago. I think they're in a better situation than San Jose, who just got the last two. But yeah, like Toxic said, great young players in the system. I'm worried we won't be bad enough to get a number one center. It's the only missing piece to the puzzle. And yes, this is the whole Montreal thing too, with the pick hanging over, adds a degree of difficulty to the situation as well. But I like how this is going. And, I mean, we do, on this Twitch stream, we do Flames stuff all the time. And, like, this is just play the kids and see what happens. And what has happened is better results than I think you could have possibly imagined for so many of these guys. And it puts you in a good spot. So it goes to kind of the overall kind of bigger picture question of what this whole segment is. And what the next 40 games is going to be about for the Calgary Flames. Can the Calgary Flames make the playoffs? Well, the obvious answer right now is, well, duh, they're in a playoff spot today. The Calgary Flames right now sit in the final wildcard spot in the Western Conference with 49 points, with a record of 21-14-7, which I will go to my grave reminding everyone that's just a 500 hockey team. They just happen to wait a little bit longer to lose some of those games, but that is also life in the NHL. It's like, this is a side quest entirely, but it's like, oh, this guy's a good tournament poker player. That's what a real good tournament poker player. Oh, so he hangs around long enough to not lose his money and gets into the money, and that's what makes him a good tournament poker player. There's obviously more nuance to that, but that's basically what this is. The Flames are a good regular season hockey team because they wait longer to lose the games. Not to the level of the Vancouver Canucks, who are at 10 overtime losses right now, which if one of those converted to a win, we're not talking about the Flames in a spot right now. But Calgary does have a 1-point edge on the Vancouver Canucks with equal games played, and they have a 5-point edge on the St. Louis Blues going into this little home and home. And so that is where kind of the upward pressure is coming from, right? Like Utah, even though they're a point back with 2 games in hand, the Gunther injury really sucks for them right now. So I don't know if that's going to be a team that you feel overly threatened by right now. So your window is pretty small in the teams that you're focusing on. The one thing I do have concerns with is that I don't know how much more, again, upward mobility there is for the Flames. Like I doubted the Kings this year. I still don't love them as a team. But at this point, we're halfway through the season. They're 14-2-1 at home. They're a good hockey team. And so that's going to be a difficult one to catch. And so the issue is there's more teams behind them that you feel like, okay, well, that might be better than the Flames. Then there are teams ahead of them that it's, well, the Flames are better than those guys. Because the Central Division, forget it. That is a ridiculous division, what they have going on there right now. And Vegas and Edmonton are just a tier above at this point. But I do think that this is a Calgary Flames team that can absolutely make their way to the postseason. Now, you guys are raising some points in the chat here. Big saying, flame scoring is my main worry. And that is absolutely the main cause for any kind of concern with this group, is that this team right now is at 2.67 goals per game, which is good for 26th in the National Hockey League, which honestly feels a bit high for 2.67 goals per game. And looking at it right now, their goal scoring leader is Jonathan Huberdeau with 18, which is already a Calgary Flames high for him. You have Kadri at 15, and you have Matt Coronado at 10. All of those, like Huberdeau's shooting percentage is a little bit high. I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot coming from that, but there are a couple that I think more is coming from. Specifically Sharangovich. I think we're going to get more now from him. I do think Coronado with Backlund and Coleman, there's going to be a little bit more of that coming, but I also think Backlund and Coleman have maybe regressed a little bit further down to the mean than you would expect. Both of them were shooting percentages right around 10. I just think that some of these guys are due for a bit of a boost when it comes to the offensive side of things. Obviously, the big whole thing in the room is Kuzmenko, and if he does ever figure it out fully on the offensive side of things, then you really got something. And so it does put the Flames in an interesting spot, because as you mentioned, they have very obvious needs, right? Like they need a number one center long term, and they need scoring. The first isn't available out there right now. That one you're probably going to have to draft, unless there's an Elias Pettersson thing, which we could get into a conversation about it. I just, maybe this is for later on in the week, because I think you can talk yourself into actually believing that would make sense to actually do that. But that needs a whole bigger thing. It does put the Flames in an interesting spot where like there is probably going to be some goal scoring out there. Right? When you're looking at the trade board and stuff like that, like there are a few pieces out there that from a rental standpoint, it would make some sense and it would fill some holes and you could actually make a bit of a charge. But that is, again, getting away from the long-term kind of view of this team where you do want to get the kids these opportunities. And that is kind of the value of this, is if you aren't going to tank, at least give these kids a view of what the playoff race is and a view of what these meaningful games are. And yeah, you had a great win against the Chicago Blackhawks, but now you got to play again tonight against the St. Louis Blues. And that is a huge game. And really, like, I don't want to overstate it because it is still January. But we are kind of into we're into the back half of the season now. And you look at these next two games, it's not even a home and home. It's back-to-back away games in St. Louis. it's a monster series. That this is, the Blues are looking at this as their season, and that's something that you have to learn as a young team. Is like, maybe this team doesn't have the bullseye on them right now that a Vegas or an Edmonton or out east of Florida would have as established teams. But right now you have the spot that everyone else wants, and the Blues, if they win these 2 games, all of a sudden they are within a point of that playoff spot, and for them, it's on. But if you can go out and just bury them, I'm not saying you put them away for good, although that would put you 9 points clear of them, and they would then be at 46 games played, and I don't think that they could make that comeback. It would take them a while at least to get back into it. So this is a real opportunity and a real learning spot for the Calgary Flames. And so back to the overall question again, can this team make the playoffs? I genuinely think that they can. I really, really, really know that, or I really, really think that this is a team that can kind of scratch and claw their way into a playoff spot. It does not help the long-term overall whatever. And you are going to have to get maybe a little bit creative to get that number 1 center into this organization. And it's tough because this is a year where it was ready-made. It was right there, right? You have 8 of the top 10 picks in the first round are centers. It's there. It's right there. But this team is growing and developing in a way that I don't know if a lot of people saw coming. And that is overall, I think, a positive, even if it kind of goes against the net negative here. Toxic. Zari at his best is a prime Lindholm. That's interesting. I will be honest. I kind of thought for a bit that Zari's best was kind of a second or third line guy, depending on what team it was and just kind of where he was clicking at. I think now, Prime Lindholm, I don't know if he's ever going to be that defensively, but from an offensive standpoint, like that, I think that there's worse comparisons you could make for sure. I haven't really thought of it like in terms of what an actual comparison would be, but I think that when you see the steps that he has taken now and the gifts that he very clearly has and that he has worked on and cultivated here at the NHL level, he has really grown into a role now where he can, I think, be quite successful at being kind of I don't want to say number 1 center, because that implies that I think the job is done, and I don't think it is. I think that if this team goes off and wins a Stanley Cup, Zary is probably their second line center. And if they're a dominant whatever, he's their third line center. But I do think that he can be a number 1 center on this team, and you're not looking at it like, that's your number 1 center. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be that. Also, Toxic, I don't know with Vladar in net. That has been another part of this, and something I kind of haven't touched on yet. But, again, talking about the process over results and figuring out where this thing is going, you figured out the goalie, right? Like, Dustin Wolf is, as the kids would say, Dustin Wolf is him. That they have got that part figured out. And that is, when you're looking at coming out of a rebuild, ask Buffalo, ask Ottawa, ask probably Montreal, ask Philadelphia forever. What is the toughest thing to do when you're trying to come out of that? It is the goaltending situation. And the Flames now, I think, have that part kind of figured out. So, again, they have an interesting kind of conundrum where it has progressed quicker than they thought, but not so quick that it's like, oh, job is done. It's a very interesting spot for this team right now, but I think for the Flames, you will absolutely take it. And in 3 years, we're going to be looking back at this. I mean, look, I just did a thing yesterday on the Pittsburgh Steelers where it's like, if you could have sucked just one of those years and got your franchise quarterback, that would have been great. I think we're going to look back at this time and maybe be like, like, that was fun and all of that. Probably would have been better if you were just bad and we could have gotten number 1 center and just been on our way. Although there's a pretty good one, next year in the draft. So maybe things will kind of bounce their way. But interesting times for the Flames. And I guess the overall, again, kind of final summary, once again, asking the question, can this be a playoff team? You're goddamn right they can be. And they are looking more and more like a playoff team with every passing game. Let's shift gears now and look at the National Football League as the second round, the divisional round, as they would call it, is now set. And boy, oh boy, was I wrong again on something. So let's talk some football. So, the NFL postseason's first round is officially done, as Monday Night Football brought the conclusion to a super blah wild card weekend, as the LA Rams just take the lunch money of the Minnesota Vikings. We are going to do, coming up here in a little bit, the offseason preview of the eliminated teams in the National Football League, and Minnesota is definitely going to be on there. So we're going to save a bit more of the Minnesota talk for that, but just for this recap portion, holy hell, Sam Darnold has cost himself quite a lot of money over the last few weeks. Now, I don't think he's cost himself as much as he made himself in the first, we'll say 14 weeks of the NFL regular season, but it all fell apart for him. And the difficult thing is now, this was a perfect situation for him, and one where the Vikings, I don't know what you can add, where it's well, now we got it figured out, because you're probably losing the coach who was the mastermind behind that whole defensive scheme that was a big part of getting this team here. And Justin Jefferson probably isn't going to get more awesome to a point where it makes life easier on a quarterback. Like Addison probably will. There will be guys who will get better, but I don't know how you get a situation that is better than this. And I don't know how it got so bad so quickly, because they were just uncompetitive in this game. And you look at it, and it kind of hinged a little bit where the tide could have shifted, where Stafford fumbles that ball, Minnesota scoops and scores, all of a sudden it's a 10-10 game. It was very clearly an incomplete pass, so it's not the ref screwed the Vikings for this LA story. That wasn't it. But it just that could have shifted things a little bit. But I just, at no point was there this wake up hey, this has to be better. It kind of felt like Sam Darnold, I think, is a talented quarterback. But I do think there is a ceiling on it. And we saw him just absolutely ram into that line over the last little bit. And so things really did fall apart. Toxic asking, Sam Darnold is coming back to the Vikings? No, right? My initial gut reaction would be no. I don't think he is coming back to the Vikings. I think that they are going to maybe roll the dice on another veteran quarterback and hope that J.J. McCarthy comes back all healed up, and an extra year of maturing is all that he needs to be a star in this league. But I think that instead of going out and spending $50 million or whatever it's going to take on Sam Darnold, and it's probably closer to 30 now, instead of going out and spending that on him, they will much rather, Russell Wilson for 3 again, and we'll have McCarthy go, and we'll be able to fill out some other spots that way. But the main focus of this right now should be the LA Rams, because I need to stop doubting this team. When it is rolling offensively, it is so good. They have talent, they have incredible coaching, and they have phenomenal execution. I really enjoy watching this team, and this is one of the lessons that I need to learn from this year. We always, going into every NFL season, we do an accountability episode. Maybe I need to do a lessons episode at the end of every season now too, because the lesson here, I was down on the Rams this season because you lose Aaron Donald, your defense should be worse, and it's not better, but it's still a fine defense. But my thought was, you have Cooper Kupp gets banged up all the time. Kyron Williams is a running back, and just by default, they get banged up all the time. And Matthew Stafford is old, and so he's going to get a little bit banged up. And so that the injuries are going to build up, and this team isn't going to be all that good. And some of that actually played out, but they were still able to survive and still able to get through. And so I just had it in my head, this team isn't very good. And what I should have had is, this team could run into some problems, but as constructed, they are good. Because as constructed, this is a good football team. And it is a really, really exciting one to watch. And I think they present some interesting challenges for the Philadelphia Eagles this week. And we're going to do a little bit later on in this stream, and for those either watching on YouTube later or listening in podcast form, tomorrow there's going to be another upset special episode. How can the underdogs pull off an upset? And I think this one is kind of clear. This defense is pretty good, and offensively they can move the ball very, very well. You have a well-rounded attack, again, with Nakua, with Kupp, with the Higbeast. You have Kyron Williams, who is a beast as a running back, and a coach and a quarterback who are just in sync. So there is a very real possibility that there is an upset special this weekend for the LA Rams, who just continue to get the job done and continue to add to the amazing ness that is Sean McVay and the incredible second act here of Matthew Stafford's career. And just something I'm thinking about here. I feel like for a lot of people, like right now, Andy Reid is the best coach in the NFL. We all agree on this, right? No arguments? Cool, great. Andy Reid, best coach in the NFL right now. Now, if I had Patrick Mahomes, maybe whatever, but he got a lot out of a lot of guys before that. I think a lot of people would say Kyle Shanahan was the second best coach because of some of the successes and stuff that he has had. And maybe I just held on to something for too long, but I think Sean McVay has very easily worked his way. Like, he was always in that top tier, kind of that Mount Rushmore of coaches in the NFL. I kind of think Sean McVay's second best coach in the NFL, and he is making a hell of a charge to be the number one guy in this league. And we all know the just almost obsessive way that he looks at this sport, but he is doing just a masterful job with this team. And there is, again, I think a bigger roster construction conversation to be had about this team and how they have gone about building this particular version of them, kind of post Super Bowl. It has been very fascinating to watch. But now the second round is set, and hopefully it's a better round than what we just had, because this was a bit of a dud. And there's a bit of hypocrisy on my part, because we had just a dog shit first round in the college football playoff, and then I come on here and it's like, well, fix is obvious, just get rid of the first round. Just teams 1 through 8, let's go. And I'm not saying, well, you know what, we only need 6 teams or 4 teams in in each division. I will say, the reason they added it is obvious, right? You add an extra playoff team, which gives you an extra playoff game, which gives you mucho dinero for years and years and years to come. So the reason they added it was obvious. It was money. But that 7th playoff team has just, like, there is no value add for the consumer at all. Like, it didn't add anything postseason-wise. The Broncos got just mollywopped. The Packers, everyone got hurt, so their game wasn't all that interesting anyway. And also, it kind of took away from those playoff races. Like, there was no competition for that number 7th spot. We knew who the playoff teams were going to be, going with the exception of division winners in a couple of instances. We knew who the playoff teams were going to be, and so it kind of took away from the playoff race as well. So you have made a number of games mean so much less just to add a couple more playoff games to add some money to you. And again, this is probably a summer podcast, but I do wonder if we're going to get to a part where the bubble bursts, where it's just, well, we just need more. We need more playoff games in MLB. We need more playoff games in the NFL, more playoff teams. We need a week 18. Okay, does any of this make any of this better? Well, no, but we just need more content so we can sell more stuff, so we can do this, so we can do this, so we can do this. I just feel at some point that bubble is going to burst. Right? At some point, that dam is going to break, and you're going to have to understand that more isn't always better. And the problem is, then that trickles down on the consumer as, oh, well, you only want to add NBA, you only want to have 64 games, fine. The cost of tickets goes up 15% now to offset that cost. So I'm bringing up a problem without offering much of a solution, but it is just so frustrating to see how this all plays out. But hopefully now we get into a second round that is a little bit more enjoyable going forward, because that, for the most part, sucked this weekend. For some teams, it sucked a little bit more than for others, because their season is now done. Last week, we did the off-season preview for the teams that didn't make the playoffs. This week, we're going to do the off-season preview for the teams that made it into the playoffs, by definition only, that they were in it, but they did not win anything in it. It is time to look at the off-season ahead for the eliminated teams this week. So, the National Football League rolls on, and it does so without 6 more teams, as they have been eliminated, which means today we get to look at those 6 teams in terms of the offseason now. So let's go. Last week we went in order of the draft. This week we're going in order of when they were eliminated, which means we start with the Los Angeles Chargers. There is, I think, a pretty glaring hole at number 1 wide receiver, and I'll be honest, that's coming up a lot. And when we're looking at the T. Higgins situation right now, out in Cincinnati, seems like he's entering the market at the right time. Wouldn't you say? Because, like, how many teams last week did we say, yeah, you know what, they kind of need a number 1 guy out there? to either help a young quarterback or whatever. This week, we're saying it a bunch, and we're starting with the LA Chargers, who absolutely, I think, need to have a number one in there. Like, their guys are fine. Johnson, Palmer, those guys, Lad McConkey, that is a solid 2 through 4 as a wide receiver group. But I think you saw the limitations of that, where you need to have a big play. And we had a bit of an interesting conversation around Justin Herbert yesterday about whether he's actually that dude or not. But you need that guy who can just get open, or you can just throw the ball to in big situations to come up with big plays. They clearly don't have that. If you get a T. Higgins, I think you have that. And so that, I think, is something that would very easily help this team advance and kind of move up a tier in the AFC. The other thing that's interesting about this group is that obviously with Harbaugh there, they are a defensive focused team. And you look at their pending free agents, and it is defensive starter, defensive starter, defensive starter, defensive starter, defensive starter, defensive starter. Like, they are potentially going to lose a lot on the defensive side of the football. Now, that means they have a lot of salary cap space to work with. And so I'll be interested to see where the dollars are spent. Do they focus on the Jimmies and Joes or the X's and O's? Because if we are looking at how some teams have kind of managed the quarterback spot, or just prime example is them at wide receiver. You know what? We have a quarterback that we think, in hindsight wrongly, that we think can go out and win us games and win us playoff games with minimal help at wide receiver, because we think he is that good. And how many, there's a reason Brock Purdy got to start anyway in San Francisco. It was because Kyle Shanahan and company was like, look, we got a system and we got enough weapons around this kid that we can throw in a 7th round pick. Obviously, it wasn't entirely the plan. They were hoping that would be Trey Lance. But still, they were hoping to get a young kid in there because he would be cost effective, and you can surround him with weapons, and there you go. I do wonder if now on the defensive side, they go, you know what, we got the scheme in place, we have this style, we don't necessarily need to go out and spend a ton of money on game-breaking guys, because we have this style, we have this mentality, we have this culture that is going to just have us be this great defensive juggernaut, and we can kind of mold some of that young clay into that. So I'm very interested to see what year 2 looks like with this group, this overall management structure out in Los Angeles. But I do think that they're going to have a couple of holes in the secondary to fill, and what they do with the Khalil Mack spot is going to be interesting. He is an unrestricted free agent. There's been some talk that he is pondering retirement. He is still a beast who can get after the quarterback. I think it was 6 sacks, 9 pressures this year for that team. If he goes, they're going to need to figure out a way to replace that. Moving on, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Talked about it yesterday. They now, I think, need a guy at quarterback. It is obvious Mike Tomlin has established a winning culture in Pittsburgh. But I think, as we discussed yesterday, you need that on-the-field leader to elevate things around you and push this team forward. I just don't think you can do it now with Russell Wilson at $5 million this year, and then maybe we go out and get Jameis Winston for this, and then maybe next year we go out and get a Wilson at that. You know, I think you need a guy at quarterback. The problem is, again, that's not really out there, especially for them this year. This isn't, honestly, it's not really a draft for it anyway, and it's certainly not a free agent class for it. But that is still, I think, at the top of their to-do list. Also, again, we're 2 for 2 on this one. Need a number 1 receiver. Pickens very clearly established he is not that guy. I think, honestly, the biggest need for Pittsburgh is to get Pickens the fuck out of town, because he is so obviously a hindrance to the culture that they are trying to set there. And when you see this guy get all boo-boo face at the press conference and hear how they are talking about this guy in kind of the lead up to it, this is 100% to me a Singletary, can't win with him, can't do it. That I would want that guy exactly a billion miles away from my franchise right now. I wouldn't even want the Saskatchewan Roughriders to sign that guy. I think that there are guys you win with and guys you don't, and I think he is a guy you don't, and there are a lot. Look, Mike Tomlin won with Antonio Brown. There was a lot going on with that cat. The one thing, though, he was good. George Pickens, he's good for this offense. There's no doubt that this offense was worse significantly when he was out. But there is, I think, not enough talent in that guy to be acting the way that he is right now. So, that's it. Just figure out number one quarterback and number one wide receiver. I do wonder, because both Wilson and Fields are available now. Wilson, it did seem like he kind of turned into a pumpkin as the year went on. I still have this thought that Justin Fields might be able to be something. And so I do wonder if that is kind of the roll of the dice that you take. Like, let's not have any safety net here. Let's just see. This kid he was a first round pick, right? Either way, a guy who, very successful college career, has shown some flashes of being a quarterback that can be productive in this NFL. So let's see what he can actually do. And if it doesn't work, and you have your first losing season in a billion years, maybe there's a quarterback or two in the 2026 draft that could be available that would allow you to build things there a little bit. So I do think that's probably the way that they're going to go. I think maybe a little bit more D-line depth. It did seem like last year TJ Watt got hurt and the defense just kind of fell apart. This year, it just felt like Watt lost half a step. And I know suggesting that a Watt lost half of a step now means that I have to challenge him to a Peloton race. I think that's how that works. But no knock on his physical fitness or anything like that. It's just they ask a lot of this cat. And so I think if they can add just a little bit more depth on the defensive side of things to take a bit of the pressure off of him and really kind of strengthen a strength, that would really help this team. But honestly, I don't think they're that far off of being a very serious contender in the AFC. Moving on to the Denver Broncos, an exciting rookie season for Bo Nix ends in a bit of disappointment as they get whooped on by the Buffalo Bills in the second half of that game. And so now here we are again, 3 for 3. Probably need a number one wide receiver. Cortland Sutton was great in some moments. Franklin has, I think there's something there. But again, much like the Chargers, who we talked about earlier, they have Sutton, Franklin, and Humphrey. That's a pretty good 2-3-4, right? You feel good about that 2-3-4. You get a 1, all of a sudden you're feeling very good about that situation. And so I think you do need to focus on getting Bo Nix a little bit of help. I think the defense is fine. That defense was quite good this year for the Broncos. Maybe shoring up the offensive line a little bit, but this team is, I think this was a bit of a Cinderella season. I do think you have to accommodate for the thought that there might be a bit of a sophomore slump from Bo Nix, and maybe that he isn't just this superstar going forward. But overall, this team is in a pretty good spot moving forward right now. The Green Bay Packers. I think it was pretty obvious on Sunday afternoon what the issue is. Offensive line. Offensive line. Offensive line. Now, I don't know if that is the number one concern, but that is something that absolutely needs to be addressed. The depth on this offensive line very clearly, but even then, again, this is the one thing I want to caution against with Green Bay this season, or this offseason, is they didn't lose that game specifically because of injuries. The injuries definitely knocked them down enough that it was going to be difficult for them to come back in that game, but they also just didn't play well enough. And so, the injury they had to Jenkins on the offensive line certainly hurt that. But their tackles couldn't block for shit before that guy left on the interior, right? So they need to get that situation figured out. But I still think the biggest need for this team is the same as it was a year ago, and that is in the secondary. And specifically, I guess, on the defensive side, just in general. That this team still isn't good enough defensively to match what they are capable of on the offensive side of the ball. And that is something I think that really does need to grow here a little bit. They were able to keep things close because Philadelphia just refused to attack the weakness of Green Bay in that secondary and just tried to ram it down their throat, and just happened to have one of the best running backs in the league to be able to do that. But I think that there is going to need to be a bit more of a focus now on addressing that defense. Also, I do think, so we'll call this 3.5 out of 4. I do think they ultimately will need a number one receiver. This whole receiver by committee thing is really good because they have a bunch of talented guys. I went to bat for Christian Watson a lot this season, and injuries or whatever, I was a little bit off on that. I don't think he is a number one now. It does really seem like Reed is the most talented dude in that receiving room, but I don't know if he is a number one. I think they need that guy to, again, go out and make some big plays for Jordan Love. And honestly, they need Jordan Love to be better. He was good. He was very good throughout this season, but for them to get to where they need to get to, I think we saw that there needs to be a bit of a leveling up there. On the Tampa Bay side of things now, after their Sunday night loss against the Commanders, this one is obvious. Defense. Defense. Offense is fine. They're probably going to lose Godwin. I think McMillan is all right as a number two. Your two-headed backfield with Irving and White works. Baker Mayfield is good. Mike Evans is still a beast. Offensive line-wise, I think they're all right. But this defense got gashed, and they just, so many times, they couldn't get a stop when they needed to. And, like, Vita Vea is a beast, but he is the only one that you feel really threatened by on the defensive side for the Buccaneers. So that needs to be something that is very much addressed this offseason, because I do think Atlanta's offense is going to be better. And I think there's going to be a step up from Carolina. This is still probably going to be the worst division in football when we get into the 25-26 season, but they are going to be facing a little bit more resistance if they want to win a division title for a third year in a row. And I think that they are going to need to shore that defense up in a big-time way. And then the last one. They were eliminated a scant few hours ago. The Minnesota Vikings. It all focuses around Sam Darnold. Toxic asking in the chat earlier, Sam Darnold coming back to the Vikings? No, right? I don't know how you can at this point if you're Minnesota. I don't know how you can justify spending $30-40 million on a quarterback who fit into your system very well, but I think very, very obviously showed that there is a ceiling to what you can accomplish with him as your quarterback. And quite frankly, I don't know if that ceiling gets a whole lot lower if you just put McCarthy in there, or if you just sign, like I said, like a Russell Wilson, or someone along those lines. Like if you just get veteran quarterback X and plug them in, and have $15 million extra to spend on maybe another weapon or maybe another defensive player or something along those lines. I don't think it is worth it for the situation they are in right now. Sam Darnold did an amazing job for them this season, and I think showed that he is a good quarterback. But I think you can still get to close to where they were with either taking a gamble that someone's going to turn into a great quarterback or average to above average quarterback play. That's kind of where I think Minnesota is right now. And so I think Darnold probably goes and finds some work elsewhere, but I don't think it'll be in Minnesota. I really like the rest of this team. I think defensively they got a lot of very strong players. I do think that Brian Flores is probably on his way out, and so they are going to need to find a very good defensive coach to help with that. But I think that they have a solid foundation in place right now, which is good because that division is going to be hella competitive. But I don't think they are that far off right now out in Minnesota. So that's the offseason look at the teams that got bounced from the playoffs. A little bit later on in this stream, and for podcast and YouTube watchers, tomorrow we'll be doing the upset specials, how every team that is left as an underdog can pull off the upset this weekend. But let's now move to the world of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It is Fight Week. UFC 311 goes down this weekend. Yesterday, we talked about what is on the line in the main event, but as all UFC cards are, this is more than just a two-fight card. We have a few very interesting aspects on the undercard. So let's talk about them. It is UFC 311 going down this weekend. Couple fights for championships at the top, but on the undercard, couple very interesting fights that I am very intrigued by. So here are, what are we, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 fights or fighters to watch for UFC 311. We will start with a fight. We are not going very far from the main event. We are looking at the co-main event. Yuri Prochazka taking on Jamal Hill. There's been some interesting trash talk going on in this one as the two debate whose loss to the champion was worse. So that's something. But I do think that we are getting to a point where there's going to be a new era, I think, at 205 pounds. And really, the Pereira era was not anticipated, right? Like this guy got beat up by Israel Adesanya and had made his way up the ranks, and it was cool that he got a title shot for a second, and now he's going up to 205, and oh my god, he's awesome. Okay. Like, it didn't fully come out of nowhere. We knew this guy was a talented dude, but for a little bit, the once glamour division of the Ultimate Fighting Championship was kind of stuck in the mud a little bit, and that allowed Prochazka and Jamal Hill to work their way to the top. And now you have a couple of guys who have, I think, pretty obviously established that they're not on the champions level, but are still pretty high up in terms of the rest of the story, that if Pereira does move up to the heavyweight division here in 2025 permanently and leaves that title vacated, these are two guys who are going to be right in line for title shots. Both have held championships before, and I think both will have an opportunity to fight for a shiny thing here again. So I think this is a very important fight for both fighters. And again, Trash Talk's been a lot of fun going along with it. Up next, we have Beneil Dariush, a guy who, anytime he is fighting, he is going to make it on the fighters to watch. I have thoroughly enjoyed following his career, but now we are getting to a point where we are getting close to the end of it. He is 35 years old, coming off of back-to-back losses. Now, those back-to-back losses against Arman Sarukian, who's fighting for a championship this weekend, and Charles Oliveira, who fought for a championship recently. Those are two very, very good fighters. And now for Beneil Dariush, at 35 years old, he has not fought for a championship. If there is going to be one last run in there, it has to start this weekend as he takes on Renato Moicano. Again, 35 years old. Moicano, though, is on a run. He's won 4 fights in a row. And so maybe I should have put this as just a fight in general, but for Dariush specifically, he has been so close for so long, and it just hasn't really got there. And now it does seem like that is just fading out of his grasp, and we will see what he can get to it. It has to start with a win this weekend. This is it. If he loses, then any hopes of a championship are gone. And for Moicano now, this is... I was going to say it's a big step up. From St. Denis, Jalen Turner, Drew Dober, and Brad Riddle. It's close to a step up anyway. But this is a very important fight for both of these fighters. As you have Dariush, who got so close, but the best run of his career looks like it's going to come up a fight or two short of a championship. Moicano is currently in the best run of his career. Can he get to that next level this weekend? So a very intriguing fight there at 155 pounds. A couple other fighters to focus on here. Peyton Talbot. He's fighting in the bantamweight division against Ronnie Barcelos this weekend. Talbot, I think there's some intrigue here. He's 26 years old, out of Vegas. He is undefeated right now, just 9-0, but coming off of a 19-second win at UFC 303, and an early second-round knockout at Ultimate Fight Night back in 2024. The guy is 3-0 in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, coming off of Dana White's Contender Series. He has finished all 3 fights that he has had in the UFC. Former King of the Cage, amateur bantamweight champion. This is a guy who, I don't know if top prospect or anything like that, but this is a guy who I think could make a little bit of noise here and could be setting himself up for a pretty strong 2025 as he enters the octagon. So I think Peyton is someone to watch for in the bantamweight division, and someone to watch for certainly at UFC 311. Also on this one, we have Aylin Perez as she takes on Carol Rosa this weekend. Perez is a 30-year-old Argentinian who, again, talking about Moicano before, this is the best run of her career. She starts it with a win over Ashley Evans-Smith back in mid-2023 and has now won 4 fights in a row after losing her UFC debut. And so this is a fighter who's on a bit of a run. And right now, you have basically a women's division as a whole in the UFC, kind of looking for some people to break through. Perez could be someone who kind of breaks through here. So some intrigue in this fight. And the last one is in the heavyweight division. It's Jailton Almeida against Sergey Spivak. Spivak going from main eventing a fight night to undercard and very far down on the undercard on a pay-per-view against Almeida. The reason I have this on here is it's heavyweight and you can go on a bit of a run pretty quickly in the heavyweight division. And Almeida, 33 years old, he's lost to Curtis Blades, but he's beat a couple good guys, right? He's beat Rosenstruck, he's beat Romanov. There are some good wins on that resume. Excuse me, for Spivak, it just has never really clicked. But again, like he beat Marcin Tybura, he beat Derek Lewis, but he's lost Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gahn. So it's a couple of guys who, when they get as high as they can, it just seems to run out of steam for them. So a pretty big fight to kind of keep both these guys relevant in the heavyweight division, which again, you're never too far from relevancy at heavyweight. So those are some of the fighters to watch at UFC 311. Let's now look at the WWE. Also, hi Deeds. Thank you for stopping by here today. Let's look now at WWE, as Monday Night Raw was back on Netflix for the second week in a row with a significantly different show that we're going to be significantly more positive on. Let's talk about it. The Netflix era rolls on in the WWE as we got the second installment of the flagship show for the WWE on the very popular streaming platform, and this one went well. I said to you guys on the preview show, like, this is going to be much more indicative, I think, of what this show is actually going to be. Last week was a lot of just the pomp and circumstance and all of that. This week was this is what you are going to get. Let's refocus. Let's do everything like that. And so I thought the pacing, it was still a little bit weird. And they're still figuring everything out. Like, we went Chad Gable entrance, bit of a pause, cuts a promo, come back, we have another commercially thing, and then we go again, and it just... There was a lot of stop and start, and it was a little bit frustrating to see all that. So that was... Again, it's still not perfect, but at least the quality of the program was significantly better, and obviously it starts with the Penta debut. He was exactly what you needed him to be. You get the Zero Miedo chant coming right off the top. Obviously, we're big fans of the guy right back there. So I thought it was all a home run. The music, a little generic, as someone said, like the... I'm blanking on the guy's name. The guy who puts the music together, but it was like a video of a guy strutting away, and it's like this guy when he puts generic drum beat 4 over generic guitar riff 7 and makes a theme song. Like that is basically what it was. That is, I wouldn't have even picked that as Penta's music on the video game when you have like generic music 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I wouldn't even do that, but at least like they're making it easy to steal the theme songs on the video game, but no, it's not great. But aside from that, he was Penta. He comes out with the little tiptoe down to the ring. I think he showcased a lot in this match. A lot of great selling. Obviously, the moveset is spectacular. It was a little bit more high-flying than I was anticipating. He really brought it all out for that one. The Mexican Destroyer, phenomenal. The tope was excellent as well. They did a great job. Michael Cole and Pat McAfee really getting over how big of a deal this guy was. And I think having it in San Jose was brilliant. And it absolutely hit. And I think like there was a lot of talk. Oh, they should have had him on Monday, on the debut on Netflix and all of that. This one worked. It was in the perfect location with the perfect crowd. They got it. Like at the end when he does the zero and then just that, and the whole crowd yells "Miedo!" Like they were there for it and made this guy feel like a big deal and kind of makes it feel like this is someone that you need to pay money to go see. And then the promo after, don't know why that happened, but I don't speak Spanish. My wife does a little bit, but I thought it was perfect. He is someone, like just that is, when you want to show someone, hey, what's charisma? It's that. You are speaking a language that, like, a lot of people understand, but a lot of people don't. I didn't have a clue what he was saying, and I was captivated. I was enthralled. I was hanging on every word that I didn't know, because he just has it. It is the whole presentation, right? It's the contact lenses, it's the mask with the makeup. Like, I put that mask on, I look like an idiot, but he's got the mask with the makeup and everything like that, and it's the delivery, it's the swagger, it's the everything, and it just gets people invested, and it just, every bit of what you wanted to see with that debut was an absolute home run. Deeds, you can probably tell how the lighting changes. I was looking up the tweet you were talking about. Here is what Chad Gable tweeted out 4 hours ago. I detest Penta, luchadors, and losing. But last night was a reminder as to why I fell in love with this beautiful artistic expression of physicality and the sport of professional wrestling when I was 5 years old and have been obsessed with it ever since. I felt so alive. Yeah, Perfect. 10 out of 10. No notes. It kind of seemed like that, right? Like that seemed like it was a fun match to be in. That Gable was a perfect kind of base for Penta. And if they want to do more of those guys doing that kind of stuff, by all means, sign me up. But last night felt like the debut of a superstar in WWE. And they don't have a great track record with outside folks who maybe aren't the most fluent in English coming in and ending up with something. But this is a new era. We are not going to get Penta and eventually Ray Phoenix coming in and writing Juan Deers. We're just that's just not going to happen with this. I have so much faith that this organization is going to be able to package this in such a way that they are going to maximize this. And I am so excited for the ride that we are going to get with Penta. He felt like a world champion level performer last night, and I am so excited to see where this whole thing ends up going. But yeah, like you can do a storyline with that. I do caution against it a little bit because I think we all know with American Made and some of the promos that they were cutting that may as well have had Kid Rock, American Badass playing underneath it. I think we all know kind of what they're hinting at with that group. And to have him feud with a very Mexican performer can lead to a couple of things, you know? So I do worry about them dabbling in that gray area a little bit when Hulk Hogan still shows up on your TV program every now and then. But the in-ring product is going to be amazing. And I trust those performers and I trust the staff more than I did the previous regime and all that. But I think that this is the start of something really, really special. Overall, the one of the things I said was we need a direction for Saturday night's main event and we need a direction for the Royal Rumble. And I think they did that really well. They set up Saturday night's main event quite well. Sheamus, Braun Breaker, Jey Uso against Gunther, they set that up great, but not sacrificing from the Royal Rumble. They would do that a lot, right? When they would do, back when the 3-hour era started, we would get these mega shows right before a pay-per-view. And you would kind of understand it because you want, if you're going to build up a big show and have a big audience, you then want to be able to tell your biggest audience, hey, by the way, we got this thing coming up and oh my God, it's only 6 days away. How awesome is that? How lucky are you that you've come back into the warm, welcoming arms of the World Wrestling Entertainment, and now we have our biggest show coming up a little bit before. But the problem is they would build into it and they would hype up that main show so much, and then you have 6 days to get ready for this thing. And there'd be different programs and there'd be different stuff going in, and it would be a bit of a convoluted mess, and you would end up really sacrificing one for the other, which ended up being an average product. But I think now they have really walked that line very, very well. And part of it is Saturday night's main event. It's a 2-hour sprint of professional wrestling, and that's all it is. You're not setting up 9 different angles for it. They're probably basically good on the Raw side for stories going into that. And also the Royal Rumble kind of sells itself. But they have made the Royal Rumble feel like a mega deal, right? And there are so many different storylines that are coming together now in this Royal Rumble. You have huge stories, at least on the men's side, that they haven't really built it up at all on the women's side, to be perfectly frank, which I think is very much a knock against what is happening. But on the men's side, like Roman, Cena, Punk, Rollins, McIntyre, Uso, all these guys are going in with the main focus of winning the Royal Rumble, but also have these side quests going on. It's going to be a very fascinating Royal Rumble, and I think it is honestly one where there are a lot of potential winners in this whole thing. So I'm very fascinated to see where this whole thing goes with WWE. The other thing that I said that they needed to do on Raw was to establish Gunther as the guy, and goddamn was he awesome. And we've talked about it on here. Toxic, I think you've been along with me, that we were a little bit concerned that Gunther, we're veering a little bit on the babyface side, and we don't want that because this guy is an excellent heel. There was no question what side of the fence Gunther was on Monday, because he was a dick in the best way possible. God damn, it was funny. He nailed exactly what he needed to on that. Jey Uso coming out as the next challenger. Again, the best way to make someone feel like a main eventer is put him in the main event. And Jey Uso, I thought like he cut a great promo. You felt the passion, obviously. And Gunther just shutting it down in the most Gunther way possible was absolutely perfect. He was brilliant in this. And we know where this match is going to go. We know how this is all going to play out. Gunther's probably going to get the win, and that's going to be that. But this was a very entertaining segment to really establish quickly what Gunther is, what Jey Uso is, what they're both fighting for, and setting it up for Saturday in a couple of weeks. Perfect. Excellent job. Really well done. Rhea against Nia. It's the feud that no one wanted again. But I will say, Nia's character work has gotten a lot better. Watching with my wife, who very much in and out on wrestling, and right now it's on Netflix, and so I get to watch on the big TV. And so we're watching it, and she's like, "Nia's gotten a lot better, hey?" Yeah, she kind of has. Like, don't watch the matches, but she has. Like, it used to be a whole lot of like acting class 101 with some of her promos and stuff like that. But she is, I think, understanding what it means to be not likable, what specifically about her people don't like, and how to kind of maximize all of that. I think that she has gotten a lot better out of that. And so I don't think that this is the way that we were really hoping to go with this. Although, I mean, it gets you to a quick match, and then the big thing for Royal Rumble, and not even for Royal Rumble, sorry, but for WrestleMania season and all of that. But yeah, it's there. So you're a weird spot right now with Nia, because she is quite good at being a heel. She kind of should be toward the top of the card just based on her persona and her, you know, like she is unique, right? So you want to take advantage of that, but also like no one takes her seriously, and there is a bit of a tune-out factor with her with a lot of people. So you need to find a way to find that balance with that particular character. Deeds, I don't see Jay winning the Rumble, but taking the Money in the Bank. I could totally see that. I think that he would be a pretty good candidate for Money in the Bank, and kind of fit exactly where Damian Priest was a year ago, and work into that way. I think that works really well. I think that's really good. Sheamus against Ludwig Kaiser was so much fun. These guys have great chemistry. This feud, I think, elevated both. It really elevated Kaiser as a singles performer, kind of getting out of the shadow of Gunther, and I think really showing that he can be someone that can be elevated a little bit more in the next season, I think, of WWE, kind of post-Mania. He's another one that I think you can kind of work up a little bit more. But now Sheamus against Braun Breaker is going to be a fun match on Saturday night's main event, and I think a good showcase for both of those guys. A couple of quick hitters here. Sami Zayn, there is a real focus now, it seemed like, on this show anyway, of Sammy, you've never won the world title. When are you going to start focusing on yourself? When are you going to start doing this? When are you start? And so we are seeing a real good advancement in Sammy. And they pointed it out on Post Wrestling, listening to their recap. Elimination Chamber's back in Canada. And they did that last time, and he had a title match against Roman, and he came very, very close. I wonder if you get the rematch. Like when we've done the booking WrestleMania 41, I have booked Sammy to win the title at WrestleMania over Gunther, and kind of tie in their history there. I wonder if you do it a week before, a month before. You have him win at the Rumble. Goldberg, there's rumors that he's coming in to challenge Gunther. You set those guys up for a match, and you spiral Sammy off into something else as a title, as a world champion. I think you could very easily go that way. I do think that there needs to be a bit of an advancement in this story very quickly for that, but I do think that is something that you could heat up and tell pretty well. The New Day thing, it's becoming a little bit too comedy-ish, where they keep getting cut off and all of that. I'm happy they brought a serious tone with it this week, and I'm happy that there's going to be a bit more of an advancement now in this story moving forward here a little bit, because it does feel like this thing has kind of cooled off a touch since the fantastic anniversary segment that they had with Big E. Also, the Wyatt Six, oh yeah, they've just been transferred over to SmackDown now. So this feud with The Miz and Karrion Kross, that just goes away. And we're just going to pretend all of that never happened. It felt very old school WWE in not a good way, but I don't think any of us are going to be in a big disagreement with anything like that. And then the main event, the street fight. This is another one where the pacing's a little bit weird because it's obvious they went to a commercial break, and so not a lot was supposed to happen, but we're watching it on the international side, and not a lot is happening. And so it does kind of take away from the pacing of it a little bit. Like, it's weird that, well, we didn't get to watch commercials, and so that kind of ruined the match for us. I'm not going to say it ruined it, because I think it did what it needed to do. But there was that stretch there where obviously commercial was happening, and nothing happened, that it took a little bit for me to then get into it, where honestly, if you were telling me about the latest deal at Wendy's, I would still have this anticipation of, okay, what's happening, what are we doing? And so I do wonder, because you can't just do like a big story thing while a commercial break is happening and your biggest audience in the States isn't watching. But you also just can't sit there and like, okay, well, he's on a stretcher and well, it's kind of moving and now it's not moving. And maybe it is moving a little bit. Oh, it's not moving now. So where do you go with that? You can't really go that way, but I do think that, like, I wonder if you can go to a, like, sideline reporter Jackie Redmond is right there, and it's like, Michael Cole, we're talking to people, there's this, that, and the other thing, whatever, and then you can come back from break, and for the Americans who aren't watching, Michael Cole can say, our boots on the ground reporter Jackie Redmond told us during the break that this and this and this has happened, and so they're doing this, that, and the other thing. So I think there's ways of getting creative instead of us just watching the part where they're obviously killing time before the commercial break ends. But the main thing of this was get Damian Priest over as a badass and finish this feud. He ends it with an exclamation mark, and I don't know if he is fully in the main event picture right now, but he is certainly at the very top of the mid-card and can be just lit up a little bit to get him into the main card picture, I think, pretty quickly. So overall, it did what it needed to do, but I would now like to see Finn Balor start to get elevated a little bit more as well. I would like him to win his next feud. That would be my wish for him. So that is going to do it for the Tuesday podcast portion of this stream. All right, that is the show. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Again, if you want to catch these early and be part of the conversation, you can check out twitch.tv/primetimepk. These shows always presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. We got awesome Cannons gear, really cool Stampede Wrestling shirt as well. Some really awesome stuff over on the site, so make sure you check out all of that. Follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein. Like I said, twitch.tv/primetimepk. And this was fueled by Swift Energy. Check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Tomorrow on the show and on YouTube, we are going to have upset specials looking at how each team in the NFL who are the underdogs can pull off the upset in the divisional round. We'll get ready for AEW Dynamite coming up tomorrow and look at a pretty stacked schedule over the next month for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. All of that coming up on the show tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Have a great rest of your day.